All right, we are back with the Y&T deep dive on Tim's Vinyl Confessions, continuing our look at the Y&T catalog. John the Music Nut joins me once again. Hello, John.
Hello, Tim. How are you?
I'm really good, and we're at a point now. This is a crossroads, if you like,
Mhm.
because we're talking about. Guess this would be what, the eighth Y&T studio album,
Yes,
and their first for Geffen Records, their first without Leonard Hayes on drums. 1987's Contagious. Mine's actually a stamped
ooh, look at
promo
that.
copy.
Nice.
Yeah, I found this much later than I found the rest of the records.
Mm.
We'll get into the back cover and all of that in a little bit, but this album is the first album with Jimmy DeGrasso on drums, who was a relative newcomer at this point. I think
Yes.
he had auditioned for Ozzy's band. I'm assuming Randy Castillo would have gotten that gig. And I'm trying to think what else I had read that he had done prior to Y&T, but not much. He
Mama's
was
Mama's Boys?
Mama's Boys. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yep.
So he got, hired on sometime in 1986. And there's really cool footage of the very first show that they did on the On With the Show documentary from like November 86, Jimmy doing his drum solo. They signed this big record deal with Geffen Records. This was supposed to be it, John. This was supposed to
That's
be
right.
okay. All right. Now they're on a record label that knows how to market this type of band. Okay, what are we going to get? Well, we got Contagious. So is the CD version.
Hmm.
One of my regrets, I my first few CDs, when I started buying them, I still had long boxes. They still came in long boxes. The long box of this actually went down a little bit, more like the cassette,
Right.
and I kind of like that. That
It's true.
kind of
Yep.
goes down further. So the long box was more of
Hmm.
this, right? And
Right.
yes, and this was. Let's get the shameless plug out of the way. That artwork is by Hugh Syme.
That's right.
Well, Hugh Syme also did the artwork for Down for the Count, the Y&T album review, and he put a nod to this album cover by placing this vial on
Yeah.
top of the T, which I didn't
Hmm.
notice right away. And when I did notice it, it was like perfect. That's perfect. Um, but as for the album itself, a lot of changes. One curious thing that stayed the same, but let's um, let's dive into it by talking about the first single, which was the first track and the title song, Contagious. This is the 12-inch promo single.
Hmm.
And, well, your thoughts on Contagious?
Okay. It's a little Bon Jovi with the oh, but they make the song their own. It's great song, very catchy. Dave sounds great on here in his vocals. Dave sounds he really sounds hungry again after the In Rock We I'm sorry, the Down for the Count album. This
Yeah,
is just a great song. The video is a little silly, but this was the first single. Very well crafted. Most of the songs on here are very, very good. And I think this should have got more of a push. And I'm going to get much deeper than that as we go on. But great opener. Still sounds great live when you see them. They always do this song live.
I
Excellent.
love it. I love it. I love it. Uh, to me, and it's because I was so into Bon Jovi in '87. To me,
Mm-hmm.
this should have been an across the board smash.
Mm-hmm.
This should have done well on rock radio. This should have done well on pop radio. You could have heard the
Yep.
song in the supermarket. To
Yeah.
me, this was an effortlessly enjoyable song from the first listen. You are hooked
Mm-hmm.
right in. It just grabs your attention right off the bat. I think Dave's hitting a vocal peak here.
Yes.
Like he's singing incredibly well. I it's short and sweet. It's 319. Doesn't go on, doesn't wear out its welcome. It's not overly repetitive. It's just
Mm-hmm.
enough so that when it gets done, they don't beat you to death with the chorus. You want to hear it again and again and again and again. And it should have been an enormous hit single. And I don't understand. Like this should have been a new beginning for them, and
I agree.
probably bigger than they'd ever been. But it didn't happen. For whatever reason, it just didn't happen. I also want to say, among the other things that I love about the album cover, the logo is back, and it
That's
might be
right.
the best the logo ever looked.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's interesting is that by this time, a lot of times that cassettes that came out in the U.S. and Canada were starting to look the same, but the U.S. and Canadian cassettes, Contagious, are very different looking.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, not sure why that is, but
here's your American again.
Yeah, and by now, I always liked this. Growing up on the border, so I'd get a lot of tapes in the States. I always liked these clear.
Me too.
I always thought these.
Yeah, I always like to clear over to white.
Yeah, they looked classy or something.
They did.
But so yeah, Contagious. The album is off and running, and we can talk a little bit more about what happened, the aftermath of it. But next up, another great track, "L.A. Rocks," which has a little bit of history. You want to talk about this one a little bit?
Oh yeah, well, there was originally going to be Boys Night Out, but Sammy Hagar was putting out a song called Boys Night Out at the same time on the self-titled album, and then
which came out right around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so Geffen asked them to change the name of the song, even though you hear the words Boys Night Out over and over in this song. This is a solid track here. There's a good chorus here. That guitar line that you hear throughout the song is really cool. This is good. It's not one of my favorite songs on here, but it does keep up the momentum.
This song started out life as Dance, Dance, Dance. And that's going to be heard on Unearthed Volume 2 with Leonard still in the band, which is kind of interesting. Kind of like hearing an early version, when you hear an early version of Def Leppard Animal with a two-armed Rick Allen. It's that kind of like, oh, I didn't know this existed, but for some reason they didn't want the dance in the song title. I don't know why. I think "L.A. Rocks" is a more distinctive title than "Boys Night Out." There's a lot of "Boys Night Out" songs, so I never understood that whole Hagar thing, because that was never a single. That album was a contractual obligation, but anyway.
It wasn't a good one either.
No, record companies never fail to get involved in things that they probably shouldn't get involved with.
That's true.
Temptation. This was the big power ballad on the album. What do you think of this one?
And this is where A&M dropped the ball, because you signed this band who has not gotten a break. Geffen was the label to be on at this point. You had Guns N' Roses, you had Aerosmith, you had Whitesnake, and you have this fantastic power ballad that should have been single number 2, video number 2. I heard this song in 87. I'm like, this is it. This is the song. And we never heard another single from this album.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of their best songs. I mean, everything about this works. The soft verse into the loud chorus, that, just like we were talking about for one of the songs on Down for the Counts, it opens with that great guitar line, and that, which is played throughout. It's a wonderful hook, wonderful solo, very lyrical, but it builds. Great ride out at the end. I'm sorry, the fade out with Dave playing those great guitar lines while he's singing along. This should have been a huge hit. You think about how many songs that were similar to this in 1987 that were all over the charts. We had Is This Love? We had Here I Go Again. We had Love Bites. We had I Won't Forget You by Poison. We had Sweet Child of Mine. These songs all came out right around the same time, within a few months of each other. And there's several others I could talk about. This fit in just like a glove with all these songs, and should have been as big a single as all of those songs. There's my 2 cents.
It's interesting because I like the song. I don't know if it carries. I don't know if it does its job as the flagship power ballad, but it definitely should have gotten radio airplay. One thing that is interesting about it is it was co-written by Bruno Ravel or Ravel from Danger, and there you can hear demo versions of this. I don't know if it were meant for the first Danger album or not, but I wonder how much of this song came to I think it was I want to say it was Bruno Alpitrelli, I think. Alpitrelli.
Yeah.
So, and Phil Kennemore. So I wonder if sometimes this happens. The song basically existed and Phil changed some lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It does have a great lead, like twin lead guitar line that kicks it right off. I could hear that kicking off and then the DJ talking over it. It sounds like it was meant for radio. Yes. But I think part of the issue, and that we talk about this in the Down for the Count book, is that the likes of Guns N' Roses, Whitesnake, very soon to follow Aerosmith, were kind of sucking up all the energy air in the room for Geffen. That's where their promotional dollars were going. And it makes no, but the real oversight here, they only got one video.
Right.
And I don't, this is 1987. And they should have at least done 3 videos at the minimum. So the fact that they only got one, it's almost like the ship sank before it even got out of the harbor. Because it's like, guys, they've given you it's not like, okay, we're going to sign this band that's got all this potential, and they give you a really difficult album. They didn't. They're for better or worse. And some people call this a bad thing. I happen to not. I call it versatility. They're playing the game. Yeah, they're playing the game to get a hit in 1987. They're hedging their bets. There are all kinds of potential hits on this album, and it just didn't happen. This would have, seems like it should have been the second single, and I don't even think there's any. Like I've never seen any other promotional singles. Sometimes there's promotional singles that don't get first releases. I've never seen any. Just Contagious. That's the only one.
One thing I'd like. I'm sorry.
I'm just puzzled over it because it's like, why? Like it would have fit right in. It wouldn't have sounded out of place on radio and on MTV.
It would have. And another thing I'd like to add, Tim, is that on here, yeah, they're playing a game. They're bringing in some professional songwriters on a few of these tracks. Unlike on Down for the Count, this still sounds like Y&T.
Well, yeah, and they're also they're not bringing in songs; they're bringing in songwriters. They're still They've still got a hand in all of these songs. Dave and Taylor Rhodes wrote Contagious. Well, Phil wrote Temptation. So yeah, they're still getting a hand in it, and this sounds like a Y&T album, and they sound like they're happy to be doing what they're doing.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean there's just so many missed opportunities on this album, and like Temptation. This disappointed me because it stalled out at 85 on Billboard, and I'm hearing this song, and I'm not saying this is one of my favorite albums by Y&T, but I'm hearing songs on here that I think should have been all over radio, and you didn't even hear Contagious. You heard Contagious on AOR, and there's other songs on here that I think would have been big on AOR as well. Yeah. Missed opportunity after they went on this big label. And yes, I understand they were putting a lot of money into Guns. I could tell you that straight out because that album took a long time for it to.
It took like a year to.
It did. And I was listening to a lot of college radio then when they would play Guns to death on the heavy metal shows. And they were really pushing the Welcome to the Jungle video on MTV because that didn't become a hit until it was re-released.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, people need to remember that now. Yeah.
Right.
This may have came out in like what, spring 87, early summer 87.
Yes.
It took almost a solid year. Like it took, I don't think that album went gold until the beginning of 88.
I believe that because it was always sitting in the 50s and the 60s.
Yeah, because
for the first several months it came out.
Yeah, and because it was different, right?
Right.
It was different. It was kind of what is this? This is but slowly they're like, this is different, but I like it. But Y&T were giving you something that was very accessible, very much like the Whitesnake album.
Right.
And
exactly.
It seemed like I don't know. You'd think Geffen would have been able to spare a few more promotional bucks to just get them. I don't know, but this is talked about in the documentary. We reference the documentary a lot, guys. I cannot stress this enough. As of right now,
Fantastic.
I think it's still available on the band's website. On with the show, the Y&T story. Get it. It is the most amazing rock documentary I've never seen one done better. But their longevity was working against them by now. And not that they were old by any stretch of the imagination. They were in their early to mid 30s,
Right.
but they weren't in their early 20s. And they weren't new and dangerous, and they weren't from the street, and they were just a hard-working band. But neither was David Coverdale. David Coverdale was no spring chicken either. And
yeah, they were younger than the Whitesnake guys.
Yeah. So anyway, next up,
the guys that were in the videos anyway. Not John Sykes.
That's right. Yeah. Next up, The Kid Goes Crazy. What do you think of this one?
Okay, this is a fun track. I wouldn't say it's one of their best tracks. A lot of people compare this to Van Halen. Yeah, I think it's more Ted Nugent. It's very boogie rock, but it's fun.
Well, lyrically, I hear a lot of David Lee Roth, like a lot of that boasting.
Mm-hmm.
Check me out, I'm the king. Like,
yeah.
Musically, it's great. It's a good showcase for the new guy, Jimmy DeGrasso. It's got some cool double bass. It's a fast shuffle, like something like Hot for Teacher. But you're right. It's got Dave. It's got Ted. It's the let's hear it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not one of my favorites, and I probably liked it better when I first got the album. For that very reason, it just sounded like an awful lot of bragging. And that's not something, and that's the type of thing where on like Barroom Boogie and My Way to the Highway that I don't particularly enjoy from them. But one of my favorite parts that I didn't get at the time when I first heard this was when right before the last chorus where Dave goes, "Home, James."
Yeah.
Well, now I understand it's got a double meaning, home James is in, his chauffeur, but it's Jimmy DeGrasso as James. But it's also the whole "let's get out of here" thing, which there's technical terms for it. The first time I can remember hearing it is on Aerosmith, Hangman Jury on Permanent Vacation, because they're in that "When Love Comes Tumbling Down," and that repeats a few times, and then Steven Tyler says, "Let's get out of here." In other words, it's time for a change in the song.
Right.
That'll come up. I'm sure there's a name for it. Tom Kiefer does it way ahead on Bad Attitude Shuffle on Still Climbing.
He does. That's right.
He says, "Let's get out of here
for a ride out."
In other words, it's time. I'm tired of doing this part. Let's get to something else. So I think that's why that "Home, James" is like we're back into the chorus now. That's one of the highlights of that song. And now, "Fight for Your Life." It's one of my favorites on the album. What do you think of this one?
It's not one of my favorites musically. It's a song about addiction, serious song, but it's looking for a hook and it doesn't find it. That's just how I feel. It just goes, I do like the atmosphere, the build into the verses, the cocaine, with the cocaine and the talk is cheap.
Yeah.
It has that nice build. The chorus doesn't really work for me. It's okay. I think they could have worked more on this, but I do like the fact that they're writing a serious song about addiction here.
Probably right in the midst of, Phil Kennemore has admitted he had a little problem with that stuff. I like the song. I really do. I get a Dokken vibe from it. Not just because the riff sounds an awful lot like Dream Warriors.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But those both came out around the same time, so I'm sure that was probably just a coincidence. So we flipped it over and we get to "Armed and Dangerous." This is another huge shouty chorus. What do you think of this one?
Okay, before I was talking about songs that should have been all over AOR, "Armed and Dangerous" to me is a great AOR sounding song.
Yeah.
Great chorus. This is just works on every level. It's definitely one of the better songs on this album. It's very catchy. I do like that little bridge before they go into the solo. It's a little different. Like the bridges on here are better than on "Down for the Count," because "Down for the Count," some of those songs they just didn't have enough. It sounds like they didn't have enough time to write great songs.
Yeah, these songs sound more complete.
They do. Yeah, they do. Yeah, this is very good. Underrated song. I would love to hear. I don't know if they ever played this live, but I'd love to hear it. It's just a very catchy song. this could have been the third video, in
Yeah,
my opinion.
yeah. This could have been a potential single for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, again, it's got. I think this is another Taylor Rhodes. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I used to. Oh yeah. No,
No,
this
this
is
isn't a
Dave,
Taylor
Phil, and
Rhodes.
Jimmy.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, this is
Actually,
theirs, just like Fight for Your Life was.
yeah. The next is Rhythm or Not. What do you think of this one?
Back in the day, I wasn't a big fan of this song, but it's grown on me over the years. We finally, like I was saying, we finally hear some Phil. Well, Phil and Jimmy are leading the way on here.
Oh
Just
yeah,
great. Yeah, they were really laying down a sick groove on this. Great, great guitar lines on this. I do like the stop start parts in the verses.
yeah.
And Dave's really playing that, using that whammy bar there in the chorus, right? He
Yep.
really loves the whammy bar
He
in
does
there.
that.
It's
Look out!
excellent. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
um,
This is a cool tune.
yeah, this is one of the few Joey co-writes on here. This was, of course, Joey Alves' last album with the band. But
Yes.
I think on the documentary, on the bonus features, he shows coming up with this riff. He co-wrote Fight for Your
Yes.
Life too, but yeah, he doesn't figure in here a lot. Next up is Bodily Harm. What do you think of this one?
Another one, it could have been a single because it's got more of that Bon Jovi flavor in there before they go, oh, whoa,
Yeah,
whoa, whoa. Chorus is awesome.
yeah,
That chorus is, I mean, from the get-go, that chorus just sticks right in your head. Yeah, this is a cool tune. The keyboard, there is some keyboards on here that are a little loud.
yeah. I know
Not,
exactly the part you mean.
yeah, like right in the
No use running.
pre-choruses. Or there's no use running. There's no escape. That part,
Yeah,
yeah. So there, it's kind of loud, but not to be
not
a
for the whole song.
right. Yeah, just little parts. It's not going to be offensive to you. It's not going to turn you off of the song. But yeah, this is very good. Another song that could have been a single because it was just so catchy.
This was always my second favorite song in the album after
Mm-hmm.
Contagious. I thought this should have been. And oddly enough, this one is the only one on here that wasn't co-written by any of the guys in the band. It's Taylor Rhodes and Robert White Johnson, who would go on to write another one of my favorite Y&T songs. As a matter of fact, the one that got me into the band. So I don't have
Yep.
a problem with that. But I think this is a good place to mention one thing that didn't change, because they got a different record label, they got a different drummer. They kept this for the first time. They kept the same producer on this album. It's
That's true.
Kevin Beamish again, and I think this is a much better sounding album. Do you think it came down to budget?
I think, oh yeah, I think it would because they're going with Geffen and John Kalodner. Yeah, he was definitely going to put the money behind a recording. He should have put more money into the videos and the marketing. But yeah, I do think it had to do with budget, no question.
Yeah, but it's a much better sounding album than Down for the Count. So maybe he wasn't to blame for the way that album sounded, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So track 9, probably the second best known song off of this. And I'm going to guess probably the most played is Eyes of a Stranger. I think the guys really like playing this one. What are your thoughts on this?
Sounds like something that should be playing at a strip club while there's a woman on a pole.
This sounds like it could have been made a hit the same way that Pour Some Sugar on Me did.
Yep.
For the same reason. Yeah.
Yeah, very sexy and sultry. We got references to Whitesnake and Scorpions on these lyrics here.
Yeah.
If you really read into them. Yeah, but that riff is wicked. And yeah, they do play this live now and then. This always goes over well. Excellent song.
I love the drum intro.
Mm-hmm.
The like the stop starts, and yeah, there's a lot of attitude in the song. This is also, as far as I can tell, this is the last time that Dave does his toggle switch thing in the solo. And
yeah,
I remember I had just gotten into the band and I bought this album along with a few others in 1990. And I remember we're almost at the end of the album, like he hasn't done it yet. Oh, there it is. But yeah, I mean, and Dave's vocals on this. I mean, Dave's got great vocals on this whole album, but this is one of his best.
Oh yeah,
because he's all in.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And next we wind down with an instrumental, not just an instrumental intro, but 235. I'll Cry for You. What do you think of this one?
Dave shines like the sun on this. Wow, his solos on here put you to tears. I mean, excellent song. Yeah, it's short. I think it's a great way to close an album. But once again, they're another one in the long line of great power ballads by Y&T, but this one's an instrumental.
Yeah.
But wow, does he make his guitar sing?
Yeah.
Dave,
yeah, that's
does
exactly
Dave.
the title is exactly that. He's crying when he's singing out with his guitar. One thing I never did understand, we'll get back to this in a second, but I never understood why on Yesterday and Today Live they just call it All Cry. I never
understood that too.
Because I remember getting that when it first came out in '91 and thinking, well, before I got to it, thinking, well, that's got to be All Cry for you. But why?
Yeah.
I've never known why they did that. But you know, and I talk about this in the book. I always wonder if this is a little bit of them saying, hey, for once, we're going to do exactly what we want on this album. And we want to do a 2.5-minute bluesy instrumental where Dave does his best, like Gary Moore, and just all out emoting with the guitar. But I think the whole band sounds great on this song. I mean, great. Jimmy's great on the drums. You can hear the whole band contributing, and I think it's a nice way to wind down the album.
Absolutely, I agree completely. Well, this album, should have did a lot more than it did.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it's the best, but it should have.
Yeah, it's not my favorite either. Contagious is one of my favorite Y&T songs, but this album, I wonder, and I talk about this in the book too. I wonder if the suits at Geffen didn't hear Contagious, the first song, and think, okay, we got it. There's no way this can miss. $2 million, guaranteed, right off the bat.
Right.
And they had no backup plan.
Yeah.
I wonder about that because, or maybe they should have come out with another track first and saved Contagious for the second track. I don't know. It just didn't have that 1-2 punch. Like it, you know, like You Give Love a Bad Name. People are looking at like, wow, what is that? And then Living on a Prayer, and they're like, okay, we're in.
Yes.
We're in. We're in for life now.
That's right.
They didn't have that.
That's true.
But I think it's like they absolutely had no plan B, because
right.
You know, an album comes out in 1981, has one video. You're like, well, yeah, well, some bands didn't have any videos. In 1987, to only have one video off a major label album doesn't make any sense.
Well, we're watching more MTV than listening to radio at this point.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, radio was important, no question, but video, that's how you got to fans in every parts of the world before you got there on tour.
Right.
And how they could hear about you and go get your album, and yeah, this should have been a platinum album, like it really should have been, and they should have had that late period renaissance like Whitesnake and Aerosmith did, but
absolutely,
it just didn't happen. Well, that's it. That's Contagious, and we are only going to continue because we're working our way through the catalog. We got one more Geffen album to talk about, a very significant one to me.
Yes.
Don't forget, Down for the Count, the Y&T album review, which John generously contributed to, among many other wonderful panelists. You can get it on Amazon. I'll have the link below. John, thanks once again for giving me a chance to really dig deep into these albums and talk honestly about what we think of them. So we're going to keep doing that, and we'll see you next time on the Y&T Deep Dive on Tim's Vinyl Confessions. See y'all later.